English and French, but I think you will suffer if you use French a bit.
I know, that's my punishment for not speaking English.
Right. Given that the audience is predominantly male, before inviting two lady speakers, just to balance.
That's not just the reason, because you've got competent ladies.
I was about to say that.
Yeah.
Two specialists in their fields, respective fields. So I'd like to welcome you all. For those who don't know me, my name is Maurice Info. I'm the CEO of Contactless Agency, and we are the agency of Visa in Mauritius. That's why we are the organizers for this mini conference, which is a panel discussion around the future of payments. I'd like to, of course, just quickly, first of all, thank our speakers, Fabrice, who's joining us by conference, Stephanie and Loretta. I would also like to apologize on behalf of Nitin from HSBC, who has had a last-minute empêchement and he couldn't make it for medical reasons. So he apologizes on behalf of HSBC and his own name. So thank you all for attending today's panel discussion. So the way this is going to go is we will have a brief discussion on the future of payments. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands and we can take them as we go along, or we can take them at the end. But I think we can keep this as informal as possible and as interactive. I'm sure the guests won't mind. And the idea is to exchange for the next hour or so, along with Fabrice, Stephanie, and Loretta. So just a quick heads up. We joined here. Obviously, this forum is being hosted by Visa. Visa, as you know, has just run a contactless campaign in Mauritius, spearheaded by Fabrice and his team. And as a logical follow-up of this campaign, we thought of gathering the relevant stakeholders. As you can see, there are about 25, 30 relevant stakeholders, so people who belong to the sector, who have been invited to today's panel discussion. So the forum is really being hosted by Visa, and I would like to introduce Fabrice. Some of you know Fabrice already. Fabrice has probably interacted with you or your organization. So Fabrice serves as a country director within the Visa East Africa cluster, and is a member of Visa East Africa leadership team. In his role, he oversees Visa business development activities in the Indian Ocean, and under his scope falls Mauritius, Seychelles, Madagascar, and Comoros. And in Djibouti, and cultivates a relationship with Visa's main clients and stakeholders in Mauritius and the region, as well as government authorities. Fabrice has been with Visa since April 2018. His experience outside Visa includes terms with Ericsson, where he was the managing director for Rwanda, country manager for Ivory Coast, and head of a Pan-African customer unit. He was also employed by Shell, Oil Products Africa. Shell colleagues are present here, welcome. In Shell, Fabrice served in different business development and marketing roles for West and Central Africa. Fabrice has a specialized master's degree in international project management from ESCP Europe School of Management, Paris, and he also masters in management from ESCA Business School in Ivory Coast. So welcome, Fabrice, and thank you very much for proposing to hold this.
Thank you for having me. I hope you hear me loud and clear.
Yes. Yes.
Can you hear us, Fabrice?
Excellent.
Can you hear us, Fabrice?
It's not perfect, but I can hear you. Don't worry.
Great. Ideally, obviously, would have loved to have you again here, but we'll make do with the current situation. And thank you for joining us via conference.
Thank you very much. I also would like to say there, but again, I don't want to spend 13 days in quarantine and 1 day working, so yeah, I will wait a little bit more before coming.
Thank you, Fabrice. I'd like also to thank Stephanie Ningshan, who's accepted our invitation very spontaneously. Stephanie, as many of you know, is the head of cards for the Mauritius Commercial Bank. She will obviously be sharing with us some insights of what the leading bank in Mauritius is doing in terms of technology later on, and in the mobile payment space more specifically. Stephanie has been in the financial services sector for 15 years. I've known her that long in that space. In her current position, Stephanie is as head of cards at the MCB, develops innovative customer-centric payment solutions and interacts with internal and external stakeholders to enable a cash-light economy. Loretta will be sharing a very interesting experience she had in the UK regarding juice later. It's not advertising of juice, but it's a tip-off she gave me just before we started. Stéphanie holds a maîtrise de gestion from the University of Paris 9 Dauphine and executive MBA with HEC Paris. Stéphanie, thank you again for accepting. Short and sweet, Loretta Joseph on my right is a two-line description. So she's a public policy influencer and globally recognized as an authority in fintech, digital asset regulation, and blockchain technology. Is there anything you want to add?
I apologise first for not speaking French. That's one of my downfalls. So if I do speak fast in English, please just put your hand up and I'll slow down. So I've been doing fintech since 1999. I was a banker for 30 years. I was a derivatives trader. If anybody's seen the movie with Freddie Mercury trading frozen orange juice with their hands, well, that's what I did. We didn't have any computers. So in 1999, we moved to trading up in Edinburgh. We had no idea how to build systems, let me tell you. First thing we learned was you don't put the buy button next to the sell. So I got very interested in fintech. I built the first algorithmic model for, at the time, Credit Suisse, something called Prime Trade. So we've been doing fintech for a really long time, I think. Then consequently I ran 2 banks. I was the managing director of RBS in India. I run a number of banks. And then in 2012 I discovered something called blockchain technology. Everybody thinks that blockchain is Bitcoin. It's pretty close. I didn't understand anything about it. Just so you know, Bitcoin's not a currency, it's not money, it's a commodity. And so I thought, all right, I don't understand what this is. So I went to Google and I said, who built the internet? And it came up with a man called Robert Kahn. So I rang him and said, I don't know anything about technology or what you built, can you teach me? So I spent for the last 7 years being taught by the best technologists in the world that we can all be grateful for this, by understanding the technology behind it. So I understand financial markets, I guess, and I understand technology.
Thank you very much. I thought you could do justice to your profile. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll kick off with the first question for our panelist. Let me ask Loretta, first of all, as a fintech specialist, can you maybe share with us a bit, especially for the benefit of media people here, what is this fintech space that we're all talking about, and what has been, let's say, its evolution in the last couple of years?
So fintech is financial technology. 2 very simple words, but people very hard to explain. So financial technology is the delivery using technology of the traditional finances through banks. That's all it is. It's using technology to deliver the services and products that we've seen in the traditional finance world in a much more cost-effective, efficient and faster way. You had as I said, the internet was incepted, I think the real version was 1973. People back in those days said that the internet was good for pornography and gambling. Look where it is today. So as I said, my friend Robert Kahn built the internet. He created the TCP, the Transmission Control Protocol, and the Internet Protocol. So move on from then to this thing. How many of you got children that you can't take this out of the left hand or the right hand off, unless they're sleeping? So the evolution of fintech has come. We had the internet, then we had smartphones. As we all know, this thing is incredibly important to all of us in our lives, and it's also very important in our financial lives. So we are seeing a move to more fast and efficient products through technology. So that's what fintech is in a broad way. Fintech gets very complicated then. I do something called blockchain technology, which is distributed ledger technology effectively, which I think is next, the 4th revolution of the internet, and I'll explain in a bit why this is challenging systems that we're seeing today, and it's challenging the traditional banking models that we have.
Thank you. Let's jump to Fabrice, if you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Thank you. So maybe you can sort of take the lead here. Visa has just run a contactless campaign in Mauritius, Tap to Pay. Can you, it's focused on cashless transactions. Can you maybe share with us some insights as to the why of this campaign and some insights and the purpose of this initiative and Mauritius?
Thank you very much, Amarish, for that opportunity that you give me. I think, yes, we launched that initiative in Mauritius about a contactless campaign. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. So basically, we decided to launch a contactless campaign in Mauritius, which is one of our key markets in East Africa and SSA. And it's within the framework of our roadmap that we have launched in 2018, June, which is called the Enabling Digital Commerce Roadmap, which is a set of directions that we think that the ecosystem should follow to really drive further digitization and cash displacement initiatives. And contactless is one of the legs, very important legs. And we have decided now is the right time in Mauritius to really push for that, because we think that contactless is a very good alternative to cash. It's a better alternative to cash. It's a secure technology. It's a chip-based technology based on the EMB standard, and you know that collaborates with our competitors in EMB, which is the global standard for smart cards for mobile phones, but also for many other devices. I think contactless is important because it helps to improve or to make more convenient some of the daily transactions that we're doing. Allowing the card holders to tap to pay instead of digging a card or instead of swiping a card. And we think that with the COVID environment, post-COVID, if there's an appetite for people to really having control their cards in their hands. So being able to pay without touching any device. So it can be either by the card or by the mobile phone or even other wearables like watch, sorry. So that is the reason why when reading that environment and that context, we thought that it was the right time to really push for an education and awareness campaign for people to be aware that yes, we know that you are using cash, that there's an alternative for some of the expenses, the benefits of life, where you can use that technology. And it will bring you separate benefits, secure, fast, and convenient. So that is, in a nutshell, the environment why we decided to run that campaign in Mauritius in August, Mauritius.
Thank you, Fabrice. You mentioned something about the security aspect of contactless encryption.
Yes, I think this is the promise. And again, unless you come to the consumer and tell them you don't use the cash and you use the card and you start to pay, you have to be able to demonstrate that what you're proposing to them is more safer and is more convenient. And I will insist on the secure part. Basic contactless technology from the Visa card are the same security standards like the EMB typical card, which chips that you see in Mauritius. Every transaction is protected by multiple layers of security. And the card, what is different in contactless, that the card stays within the hands of the customer. It stays within the hands of the customer, so it's putting the customer in control of the transaction. And the fact that it's a contactless transaction doesn't make it any less safer than other type of payments. the payment is done within a 4-centimeter distance from the ring, you can only do one transaction. Even if you push several readers, the contactless terminal, only one contactless terminal will capture the transaction. So the risk of accidental purchase is very limited. And let's acknowledge, you go to grab a coffee or you go to grab a sandwich, sometimes putting your PIN is not really fast. So we bring in that alternative, which is that same as traditional payment with card, but we give more speed. That's really what we are aiming for.
Okay, Fabrice, merci. We'll move to Stephanie. I think we all agree, and we've seen a lot of innovation from MCB in the last decade or so around the digital innovation space. I think Juice is the most one of the most prominent case studies. Stephanie, can you share with us a bit about Juice and the recently launched Juice Pro and some insights thereon?
Okay, with pleasure. So Mauritius, we may be living on an island, but we're not, we will also have influence worldwide. So one of the key insights for SMCB to remain at the forefront is to anticipate what I call macro trends. Just like a surfer, you need to anticipate the wave, because otherwise it will crush you literally. You need to anticipate macro trend, and we've been doing that. Since the first ATM, the first card, because in this market, this is my experience, is that sometimes you need to push innovation. Right? So in the case of Juice, we launched Juice in 2013, and at the time where apps were not as mainstream as they are today, and at a time where smartphone penetration was very low. Feature phone was actually the main type of phone in Mauritius. But it was a leap of faith because we really believed that, as you rightly said, so this smartphone is a macro trend, and the island would follow that macro trend. So in 2013, we launched Juice, and we decided to name it Juice instead of plain MCB app, because we wanted it to be different. We felt that it could potentially change the way that people bank and even change their lives. And I'm very interested to hear your story afterwards. So this is the ethos of how Juice was born, right? Having said that, when you anticipate those macro trends, you're maybe in advance with regards to the market readiness, the collateral is that you need to invest a lot in customer education. So you need to invest a lot in customer education before you hit that famous hockey stick, and then you get the scale. So we hit the 100,000 milestone in 2017. So that's quite a lot to sustain in terms of efforts, in terms of marketing, in terms of education, right? So this is, innovation, it's good to be innovative, but sometimes in this market, what I feel is that you need to accompany the customer and do a lot of education. And later on, I will speak about contactless also, which is actually the same story. Second insight is, adopt a test and learn mindset and an open mindset. Because when we first launched Juice, the pricing model, because we felt that we could do a value-based pricing, because it was the first app whereby you could do P2P payment, P2M payment through a mobile phone number. So we thought that we could do value-based pricing and actually charge the payer. It didn't work. So you need to have the agility and also the humility of pivoting and changing your business model, and then we change it so that it is the merchant who pays, although we gave a sort of like a freebie period, and then have other types of services whereby you can have revenues, whether it is Visa Direct probably is, PayPal, or other types of paying services. And lastly, an app like Juice needs continuous improvement. So I think we're more mature now in our digital quotient. We really build Juice as a mobile-first strategy, and we engage in the customer, not traditional customer research. We've set up a customer labs whereby we do a lot of qualitative and exploratory research. And that's why I will enroll you as a beta tester. And So and this is how JuicePro, which has been launched this year, has been built. And JuicePro has been built 100% by the MCP team, whereas the first editions of Juice was through an external developer. So continuous improvement and also continuous internal alignment. I think in an organization, I mean, in the global scale, maybe we're not that big, but at least in the local context, it's quite a large organization. And we don't always agree as to where we see the future of Juice, but that's okay. I think if we've got in mind that we're working for the same customer, we agree to disagree, we're very passionate about what we do, but it's very important to have continuously, that internal alignment so that for the customer, it's the best outcome.
Thank you, Stephanie. So if any of you have any questions or anything you want to add, please feel free. I will make this as informative as possible and as interactive. Yes, you want to share your story about Juice?
So I've lived in Mauritius on and off for the last 3 years, as some of you probably know me.
We cannot hear you.
Oh, technology. Some of you probably don't know me. I've done a lot in writing regulations and Mauritius, and to be honest, as far as Africa goes, we're actually very much ahead. So I haven't used cash for 5 years. I haven't touched cash. So come to March 2020, I'd flown from London to Mauritius, and I got thrown into self-isolation because I'd been in London. I had no cash, I had no food. And then I got meningitis, add that little one onto the problem. And so comes then we go into lockdown. And I had no money, and I've always used mobile wallets. But I thought, sitting here and I had no money. I tried to go to HSBC, there was no money in the cash machine. So my neighbour, thank God, had Juice. And so we started to collectively use Juice to buy our fruit and vegetables online. So we survived for 6 weeks with Juice. I had quite a big bill at the end of it to pay my neighbour, but that was fine. And it's interesting on that because everybody says to me, oh, Mauritius is slow, they don't adopt stuff. Well, COVID-19, did we all move from going to an office to working from home overnight, and did we all move to online shopping and using things like Juice? We did. So that happened in a week. And I think it's important because I find Mauritius really interesting. The university students here are awesome. I do a lot of technology. They're incredibly advanced. So I say to people that are writing regulation and bankers that like me, it's like, don't think about me. Think about your child. And think about the kids that are in university, because the policies and the regulations we're writing and the customers we have to make happy are those generations. And if you look at Africa and India, these emerging markets, they don't have traditional banking mechanisms. Most of them are unbanked. So you look at places like Australia, Canada, the US, 98% of the population is banked. Africa and India, it's the other way. So mobile payments in Kenya, look at the M-Pesa, went off. So the telecom companies started running regulations before the banks because they had to cover up with the banks. So, but I love Juice and I'm happy to be the beta person.
Thank you, Loretta. So, Fabrice, going back to you, I think in your current role, you're obviously spearheading as part of Visa's mandate to sort of change the payment industry and landscape in worldwide. You are part of that team and playing a role in the region, Mauritius, Seychelles, Comoros, and so on. How would you qualify sort of the response of Contactless, which is part of that fintech sort of offering? Would you say it's a success, the campaign you ran? What was the response? Can you share with us some insights?
Thanks, Amar, for that question. Very interesting question. Let's be very transparent and honest. We are all here, stakeholders about what's happening in Mauritius, so we will stay true to each other. I definitely think that the level of contactless transactions at when in Mauritius is not at the right level according to us. So that's why we are here, in order to really roll up our sleeves and ensure that Mauritius is following the same trend that we are seeing in many markets out in the world. From the second quarter of this year to the third quarter, we had nearly 50 countries improving their tap-to-pay penetration by more than 5%, and over 10 countries increasing it by 10% or more. So definitely there is a global traction about contactless, specifically driven by some use cases. We are talking about transit, which is one of them, and we all know that we are lucky to have a digital now in Mauritius since last year. So hopefully these are one of the use cases that will help us to really significantly increase the number of contactless transactions. Because when you are in a hurry to go to an appointment, you don't have to go insert your card in the machine and wait for 1 minute. You just tap and you enter into the metro vehicle. So basically, the reason why we launched that campaign is really to put a springboard in order really to put contactless the daily habits of the Mauritius. Contactless is not doing in Mauritius, and this can confirm. But again, I think for different reasons, it probably didn't take up as it was expected. But again, we try again, and this time we think that it's the right time because there is a real awareness about people who want to keep their cards in their hands because of the particular pandemic we are in. They really want to insist on the sanitary aspect. They really want to keep in control. They want to save time to do some transactions. So we think at this time, with the right efforts. When I say effort, it's about the combination of the right technology available to consumers. People need to have contactless cards in order to do contactless transactions. If they don't have contactless cards, they can do contactless transactions. So it's important that these are in partnership with different players in the ground, ensure that the Mauritius has their contactless cards. Second, we need terminals which are enabled in order to make contactless payments. That's why it's critical that we work together with the different acquirers to ensure that the technology is available for the people to experience. First, of course, we need to educate, we need to sensitize, and again, we need to insist on the benefits of contactless, and we need to demonstrate that paying and tapping is a better experience than going to the ATM, withdrawing from moving and going to buy the bread or going to buy the bottle of water in a little more than 4 weeks. We need to demonstrate that, and we can demonstrate that. And I'm confident now we can make it happen. That's why we are launching that campaign. It's not the start, it's not the end, it's the start. And we hope that the build will continue. And in a couple of months and years, we will probably have a contactless campaign which is going to be a double-digit or triple-digit. That's our mission.
Thank you, Fabrice. So maybe just to bounce back on that question on your replies, maybe Stephanie, from a bank perspective, how would you sort of qualify, how would you rate or describe the response of consumers with respect to contactless and also merchants?
So I'll start with the consumers. I think we're still at the introduction phase. I totally agree with Fabrice. We're yet to have that scaling, but we are in the right direction. And on that front, COVID actually acted as an accelerator for contactless payments. As far as MTP is concerned, we've seen that in supermarkets and pharmacies during the lockdown, the number of contactless transactions has increased fourfold. And we're registering 40% month-to-month growth on contactless transactions. So it is picking up. It is not yet, the optimum level that we want to be, but it is picking up. Now, with regard to the fact that we're still at infancy stage, if I may say, consumers' attitude towards contactless payments is actually very, very polarized. Those who use contactless payments love it. They actually tell me, because we've got a velocity of 2 consecutive contactless transactions, because the rest of the market is actually still afraid. They're telling me, for how many years you told us you need to put your PIN, and then suddenly you just tap, and then suddenly everybody is just afraid that they start losing their cards. and we need to reassure them. So I think it will gradually come, and as I said, COVID is accelerating. Personally, I don't think that we're yet at the optimum customer experience because of customers' attitude, we still need to put those, for instance, like giving a receipt. I would love to get rid of the receipt from the POS machine. Absolutely, French says. But the customer is saying, no, I want to have that slip of paper. So I think through education and continuous engagement, continuous communication, we will get through it. But this is the stage of the market at the moment. Now with regards to merchant basically, they like it because it gives them speed of play. But now merchant, when we say merchant, a merchant has got different touch points. You've got the CFO who will talk about rates, this is all he knows, right? And then there is the cashier. The cashier, sometimes they see that, okay, it's speeding my till, and what they do, because here most people might say, okay, how are you going to pay by card? You actually give your card to the cashier. So then they start tapping the card, and we say no. So I appeal to the other acquirers in the room is that we continuously need to educate merchant, right? So on our side as an acquirer, we're really pushing for contactless. At the moment, we've got 60% of our POS who are contactless enabled. And by the end of this financial year, that is June 2021, I'll be close to 100%. So that will be on the acceptance side, but we really need to educate a merchant and also reassure cardholders that it is safer than cash.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I think I have one question to our three panelists. I think first of all, on my right, Loretta, you've been in Mauritius for 3 years. You've been on the regulator side, but also as a consumer locally. Stephanie, you've been banking for 15 years, and Fabrice, you've been in and out of the country since April 2018. So how do we see the future of payments in Mauritius? Maybe we'll start with Stephanie first.
Yeah, sure.
If you allow me, Maurice?
Yeah, please, Fabrice.
I think it has been an interesting journey because again, when we discuss Mauritius in our Visa, CVA, or let's say forum, Mauritius is always listed as the exception with respect to Southern Africa, because the Mauritian population is a highly trained population, more than 90%, which is very rare in Southern Africa, and also people have cars. There are more cars than the population of Mauritius, which is impressive. So so the fundamentals for thriving digital economy are there. But still, people like cash. And it's not only about the consumer, but also the B2B, the corporate and the SMEs, they still like cash, they still prefer to use cash. So I think this mindset about using cash is slightly shifting towards a cash-like society, and we see it every day. We see the numbers of transactions, digital transactions, constantly growing year on year. We see that. We see that the e-commerce channel is continuously skyrocketing. So definitely, we are really moving towards the right direction. And the right direction is to have a cash-like society because it's good for everyone. From a macroeconomic standpoint, we all know, all studies say that if you digital your economy, you will have an effect on your GDP because there is transparency in the flow, there is possibility to track flows, there's possibility to better collect taxes. So there are a lot of benefits that translate into a GDP growth. But it's also good for consumers because they are able to track their spending. They are able to really, not carry cash. because there is the risk to lose cash, or there is the risk to have fake notes. There's also a advantage for the SMEs, for the corporate, for the entire industry, for the regulators. So it's overall benefit for everyone, but it takes effort from everyone to make it happen. And I honestly think that 3 years down the line, I think we move in the right direction, but there's still a lot to do. And we working with the regulators, the banks, the fintech, everyone who has a stake in the ecosystem, we're sure that we will make bigger strides in the coming years. That's what we believe in, and we will ensure that it will happen.
Thank you, Fabrice. Stéphanie, tu veux ajouter?
No, I'm totally aligned with you, Fabrice. I think we're heading in the right direction. Every year when I look at my figures, I think in terms of consumer payments, digital payments is gaining traction over cash. But to be realistic, we won't be able to achieve a cash-lined economy in Mauritius if we do not scale acceptance. In a payment, it takes 2 to tango. We've got high payment of cards. People, as you said, are highly banked. But where we're lacking is acceptance. And as far as MCP is concerned, we are committed into scaling acceptance. And I always tell my marketing team, previously, in the payments domain, issuing was the sexy and fat stuff. But I think in terms of innovation in the years to come, this is where we're focusing on our innovation is on the acceptance side. Because there's no way we're going to be cash-backed if you don't have acceptance. So we're looking for lower cost of acceptance, be it in terms of devices, be it in terms of QR codes, but we really need to scale acceptance in the sense that tomorrow when you go to your bazaar, you need to be able to pay through digital payments. Unfortunately today, even if I work in digital payments, I must admit when I go and buy my fruits, I need to pay cash. Right? That's the reality. So first, to work towards cash, right, we really need to scale acceptance. So it won't actually want to do it alone. There are other requirers, and that's good because we're here to build the infrastructure. Talking about infrastructure also, I know here with Visa it's very card-based payments, but very often I get the question as to, well, in Asia and China it's QR, etc. How do you see Mauritius? Honestly, I think Mauritius would be a hybrid market. I think there would be place for both types of payments, whether it is card-based payments or IPS payments. They would cohabit, and together it will approach over cash. Other things with regards to the future of payments locally is that gone are the days when you had an issuing bank, an acquiring bank, a network, and then you just switch and you get interchange or you get merchant commission. I think there would be it's a more complex ecosystem, as you mentioned, Fabrice. There are new players in the payments arena, whether it is MNOs, whether it is fintechs or non-banks, and so it actually impacts the role of banks in the system, right? In some cases, we would be at the front end, just like we used to be. In other cases, we would be at the back end, like a utility, providing access to the back-end payment rails. And for me, it's fine. But as I always tell my team, it's a change of mindset, okay? You just need to accept that it is happening elsewhere, it will happen in Mauritius, but the most important for me is to adopt what I call a growth mindset as banks. Because if you just say, oh my God, they're all coming after our own cake, it would just be defensive. So I always tell my team, let's have a growth mindset and let's see how we can fight cash and increase the size of the cake, as opposed to saying we need to defend our cake. So I think that there are loads of opportunities. SMEs, they really use archaic methods of payments like checks. We like checks, come on. So we need to get rid of checks. Government, G2C payments, lockdown, pension, postman, need to go and give cash in an envelope. Come on, we're in 2020. So I think there are loads of opportunities. So in a nutshell, I would say the future is bright in terms of payments. The future is open. So we welcome fintechs, we welcome, MNOs maybe not, but we welcome fintechs, we welcome new type of players. And I think it's a really exciting time to be in payments nowadays.
Thank you. You want to add something?
Yeah, and I think that's a big point because I think incumbents.
Can I hear you?
Oh, again. I think the incumbents have been scared. I mean, and people always say to me, banks, oh, you know, but the internet didn't destroy banks, just got rid of big bricks and mortars. People changed their business models. And we're seeing today more and more, as emerging markets especially grow with youth, this thing is instant gratification. So there are parts of the market that demand instant gratification, and they're the consumers, so you have to be consumer-centric. Yeah, Uber came along and disrupted, well, not Mauritius, but Uber disrupted, you know, the way
They
taxis.
tried to disrupt.
Yeah, and Airbnb has disrupted hotels. So disruption is going to happen. Technology and innovation. But you can't, I think it's important that banks don't look at this as disruptive technology. I think all technology and innovation is enabling. And that's why everybody needs to work together. But I do have one thing on cash, because I think if we go forward, and I write regulation, I work a lot in central bank. Oh, we've lost That's a technical disruption, if everyone said that.
You're back. You're back.
But because I have an issue, you know, it's people say all the time we should go cashless. Now, the most decentralised form of money we have on the planet is cash. There are segments of the population like my father who would prefer to have cash than ever use.
My father's like that.
So you can't discount these people, and to be honest, if you look at the Chinese models and everybody that's the CBD, so I do a lot of work with central banks, and they're all like, oh, where do we need digital currency? And I'm like, why? Because payment systems are fine. What I'm worried about is if I start writing regulation and technology moves us that I can socially engineer my children's generations by controlling everything, including their money, we're not going to live in a good society. So China are doing things for very different reasons than from the democratic world. We have to be very mindful of all these things because we don't want to build systems that don't break. It's like people that I do with cybersecurity and encryption around blockchain. We don't want to build systems that is going to force people to come under state control as well. So I think you have to cater for everybody. You can't just let cash disappear because people still want to hold cash. Majority of people probably, you know, are happy to use their phone, and that's good, but you have to cater for everybody.
Thank you, Loretta. I think you see a lot of opportunities from what I was chatting with you earlier in the fintech space. Can I pick on your experience in Mauritius just to, can you elaborate a bit on the regulatory challenges in the fintech space for Mauritius?
So we have some awesome fintechs in Mauritius. Then we have the African FinTech Hub, which has got, I think, about 94 fintech companies that are startups. Regulation around fintech is difficult globally because we have a lot of vested players, and I understand that. So there's a lot of middlemen in our payment systems. So some of these new systems that are coming up are taking out, you know, the needs of middlemen. I think for regulators, it's hard to be aligned. So we have cross-border payments, we have, you know, different regulations in different countries. What we all need to do is to start to speak the same language and to understand what at the end of the day does regulation do. It protects the consumer and investor. We can't stop technology, and nor should we. But we all need to be aligned on how this looks, you know, in 10 years, because regulators are not technologists and technologists are not regulators. There needs to be a clear path, and the internet taught us this. If we go down the path of the walled garden approaches to everything, nothing works. So we all have to be at the table and to figure out how regulation looks in the next 10 years. So that's the stakeholders, that's the policy writers, that's the fintechs, that's everybody, which is a difficult call because it's very hard to get people aligned between regulators and countries, let alone at a global scale.
Thank you. I think before we wrap up, I think we have some high-profile guests in the room, including bankers and entrepreneurs. And we'd like to maybe hear from you, what you have to share with us, and or any questions. So please feel free. The floor is yours. Iman, tu peux juste dire. All right, who's going first? I promise you can have tea and snacks after the session.
Hi. So the question is for Stephanie. Coming from
sorry, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Samir from Afrasia Bank.
Samir from Afrasia Bank.
The question I have is for Stephanie, maybe for MCD. There's one thing that I witness almost every month, and I'd like to ask you, since you spoke about mindset changing. Every month I see something happening in front of Winners for a site. So I see people queuing up, withdraw cash at ATM, and then you know what they do? They go into Winners and then they pay cash. So what is NCB's strategy in changing this kind of mindset?
It was up to me, I would remove the ATM. No, very good question. In fact, you know, when it comes to changing behaviors, this is actually our prime target market. We call them, we've labeled them cash lovers. You know, because they know how to use the card, they know the PIN, but they just go to the ATM and withdraw cash. So we do targeted campaigns to try to change behavior. Now, there is a segment of the population whereby you wouldn't do like that, they won't change behavior, right? You spoke about your father. My father is a case in point. You know, for Chinese New Year, this year, instead of giving him the traditional phone bar in the red envelope, I gave him a prepaid card, right? But the prepaid card is still loaded with, you know, with the cash I gave him. So I can't move the needle. So we are now targeting people where we believe they will be able to change behavior. And it is a very, you need to have patience and a lot of education, but I know that we are moving in the right direction. Having said that, you know, when we do customer research, you know, some customers, they tell us they click to cash because cash for them is tangible. Okay? If they say, okay, I will spend only 3,000 rupees today, right? If there's no cash, I can't spend. Whereas digital money is not tangible enough. It's too virtual. So we hear that. So now it is up to us to see what type of solution we can give so that basically what they want is control. You know, is that they take out money, put it in an envelope, and then as long as there is money, they know they can spend. Otherwise, not. But yes, those cash lovers is like really through regular targeting and trying to move the needle. Some of them are switching, some of them are still adopting the same behavior.
Oui, j'ai une question au niveau des produits cartes en général, que ce soit pour toutes les banques et même pour Visa. Je pense que avant que je puisse trouver une carte de crédit qui était contactless, j'ai dû chercher un petit peu. Par exemple, pour MCB, j'ai appelé pour la Platinum Credit Card qui était Visa et qui était contactless. Contactless était offert comme un CVP sur cette carte-là. Je pense qu'il faut, si on veut augmenter le contactless, il faudrait qu'il y ait au niveau de la disponibilité des produits cartes sur l'ensemble des banques pour justement augmenter la consommation, enfin les transactions par contactless. C'est vraiment important, je pense, que ça soit démocratisé et que ce soit standard pour toutes les cartes. Je ne sais pas si vous avez des commentaires.
De toute manière, on n'a pas le choix. Il y a une mandate à partir d'avril 2020 où toutes les nouvelles cartes émises doivent être donc des cartes avec lesquelles on peut faire des paiements sans contact. Donc ça, it's a given, it is happening. Nous, de notre côté, donc toute notre carte de débit était déjà contactless. Et là, effectivement, donc, on a lancé des cartes Visa Signature, Visa Platinum. Donc ça sont de nouvelles cartes. Donc évidemment, elles sont émises directement contactless. Mais bon, je ne vais pas faire un recall de toutes mes cartes qui sont déjà donc au fur et à mesure au niveau du renouvellement et au niveau des nouvelles cartes émises, de toute manière, un mandate, toutes les cartes doivent être des cartes contactless pour les paiements. Donc ça va arriver.
Merci Stéphane. Je pourrais ajouter la question au niveau à l'opposé des supermarchés par exemple. Est-ce que vous avez des insights au niveau du consumer behavior, carte sur les stations-service? Des insights, quelle est la tendance au niveau de l'utilisation des cartes au niveau des stations-service?
Bon, on a lancé récemment le contactless sur nos stations-service. Je pense qu'il y a deux choses. Et puis aussi, il y avait la campagne Visa où on était impliqué au niveau de Vivo Energy Shell. Je Je pense que, il y a l'éducation au niveau de nos personnels, c'est quelque chose de nouveau, on est quand même assez cash au niveau de nos transactions, on a aussi des cartes. Il y a l'éducation à faire, il y a s'assurer qu'au niveau technique, on a bien les POS qui fonctionnent correctement pour le contactless, et puis s'assurer, comme on a dit avant, que ce n'est pas le pompiste qui va faire le tap and pay, c'est le client qui doit faire le tap and pay. C'est tout un l'éducation qu'on fait sans arrêt, je le fais sans arrêt, c'est pas encore acquis, mais je pense qu'il faudra, oui, peut-être aussi accentuer au niveau des signes le tap to pay. On a déjà au niveau de la campagne, on a mis l'information au niveau des stations avec Fabrice, mais je pense que oui, ça va prendre encore un peu de temps. Et je pense que plus de cartes qui seront contactless, il faudra refaire des sessions de formation, éduquer notre personnel, et puis aussi s'assurer que ce n'est pas le pompiste qui fait la transaction depuis le client. Et ça va prendre du temps. Et je pense que c'est un given. Hein. Les gens qui viennent dans nos stations, ils mettent l'essence, ils veulent payer vite, ils veulent repartir, à moins qu'ils veulent aller dans les shops. Krishna, peut-être, c'est bon.
Stéphane? Presque Sébastien.
Non, bonjour Sébastien. J'aimerais juste rebondir sur cette histoire d'éducation. Je suis un papa pas trop. Enfin voilà, j'ai des enfants pas trop vieux, hein, il y en a un qui a 2 ans. Ne pas confondre éducation et oh mon petit doudou, tout va bien, etc. L'éducation peut être sévère des fois. Ce que je veux dire, c'est qu'Henry Ford disait je ne demande jamais à mon client ce qu'il veut. Sinon, il me demandera un cheval plus rapide. Moi, je fais des bagnoles. Il vous disait voiture, lui, ou car, parce que je pense qu'il était anglophone plutôt. Ce que je veux dire, c'est qu'à partir du moment où on offre un bon produit au consommateur et ou au marchand, par définition, si le produit est bon, par définition, si le produit de paiement est bon, il sera, j'appelle ça la stratégie de l'adaptation populaire, il sera nativement adopté par la population, qu'elle soit marchande ou qu'elle soit le client. Donc, quand tu parlais d'éducation ou education, we were talking about education.
I understand you.
Oh, you understand French? Great, I will continue in Greek, man. Donc, juste, mon enfant, je l'éduque, mais je lui dis attention, c'est pas comme ça qu'il faut faire. Si tu veux bien faire, c'est comme ça. Ce qui est aussi partie de l'éducation. C'est-à-dire que l'éducation, ce n'est pas forcément dire oui à tout ce que veut quelqu'un de manière illogique. Mon beau-père, par exemple, j'espère que ça s'est filmé, vous ne diffuserez pas ça à ma femme, d'accord? Mon beau-père, j'ai essayé une fois de lui faire plaisir et payer sa facture CWA online. Il m'a insulté parce que ça ne rentrait pas. Il m'a dit, vous l'avez reçu? Il n'y a pas de reçu, c'est sur l'email. Il a 80 balais, hein. Et donc du coup, je lui ai imprimé le reçu. Et il n'était pas content parce que ça ne rentrait pas dans son classeur au format des anciennes factures CWA qu'il avait. Je lui ai dit, ok, toi, tu n'es pas la cible. Voilà, c'est tout ce que je voulais dire à autre chose.
Thank you. I think Salish.
Maurice, if you allow me, Maurice, it was an interesting discussion. This is really the typical, we have not said that it's going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. Changing habits is always tough. It's difficult. So, but we are really passionate about that. And again, the point of having the card in the hand of the cardholder is a physical one. Everybody said there are other banks in the room. It's possible to find a mechanism to accelerate the shift to contactless, because I know that yes, there are cards in circulation which are not contactless, but if we get a demand from the client will come and say, guys, my card is not contactless, what do I do? What do you respond to those guys? So those are the things that you need to think about, because you will have that demand. This demand is coming from the new environment we are in, it's coming from the fact that they have been watching the experience that the friends or the mother or the father has in contactless payment, and they want to do the same, they want to just the same, but they don't have the contactless card. So they will come and say, hi, where is my contactless card? So you have to find an answer for that one. Second, the merchant. It's critical that if we want to pay contactless, we have to have a device with the merchant. So I know it's an investment from an economic standpoint, but yes, we need to find ways to really accelerate the shift towards the contactless enabled terminal. We have some, at this level, we have some rules, but we don't want to be the police. We want the whole system to move in the same direction. And that's why I think it's a very interesting discussion. You know, training merchant attendance is critical because you can steer the experience just by personal on in a shop or in a station with not trained. You can steer the experience of the consumer. So we all have a responsibility to play and hopefully together run up a place to make it happen.
Thank you, Fabrice. Maybe I want to ask Salish, your long experience in banks, and also as an entrepreneur in the payment space, working a bit multi-market in Africa and Mauritius. Anything you want to share with us before I come to the next speaker? Thanks.
Thank you, Maurice. Bonjour, Fabrice. Yeah, maybe what I'd like to share first is about Mauritius. We're not talking about the market where we are currently operating, about 15 countries in Africa. So, in my previous life, maybe Stephanie is not aware of this, when Angelo was here, so MCP and SPM, we used to work together. The strategy was to...
Be careful of what you say, Simon.
I'm not going to disclose some secrets, but I just want to rebound on the question you asked earlier about withdrawing cash at the ATM and to go inside to the shopping.
To align the...
yeah, remember. So what we did at that time, we said we need to change the behavior to move people to the post machine to do the payments. And we reduced the ATM limit on the ATMs, remember, from 20,000 to 10,000. And the plan was to then reduce it to 5,000, which we never did at that time. I won't go into details, but we did not do it. And today, it's quite unfortunate, so I can even now withdraw 40,000 on the ATM at the limit, right? So cash is still king. This is what I want to say. So there's a lot of education to do to still educate, like you say. This is the purpose of design the banks are doing today. There's a long way to go, and I agree with Stephanie, so it's going to be a hybrid model in Mauritius. The cards will exist, contactless will be there, and there will be mobile payments and NFC with the QR payments that is coming. So this is as far as Mauritius is concerned. In Africa, what I can see is most of the projects we are doing today, I mean, like other banks, we are issuing contactless cards already. But there's a lack of infrastructure in terms of acceptance that still need to pick up. So it's going to take time, but it's happening, and it's gradual. And I guess the work that Visa is doing and the different banks, it will happen. And the other point I can also add is the millennials and the Gen Z. Today they don't need banks, usually, if you think what I mean. And maybe it's the success of Juice you're saying, but in countries they need banking, they don't need banks. So they need instant gratification, this is what Rita was saying earlier. So everything is on the mobile platform. And this is what we are seeing, and in East Africa, South Africa, more and more projects about neobanks or digital banking, though none of them are still making money, but in terms of valuation, it's a very big story, especially in Europe. So yeah, there's a lot of disruption happening in the market, so banks, fintech companies, and it's quite an exciting time, I would say, going forward. But cash check will still be there for some time. And in Mauritius specifically, today, we don't have, EFT is not yet possible in Mauritius. Yeah, just to maybe conclude on Mauritius side today, I think it will take some time, but check will disappear once EFT is enabled in Mauritius. Currently, you can't do EFT transaction in Mauritius. The Bank of Mauritius has come up with the project of the national switch. Not all banks are connected, it's not mandated, and at a point in time it will be mandated. This is when then we can expect the usage of check will be increase. And also now when banks will start providing facilities to apply for micropayments, which is now I see MCB and other banks doing that, then of course we'll be able to displace cash.
Thank you, Zanesh.
And I just want to answer what Sanesh said. I think it is, with regards to contactless payment and displacing cash, this is an area where collaboration among banks is fine. So you mentioned like the alignment to limit the cash withdrawal amount. So this is where we need to work together to displace cash. And I think that the fact that we took the decision during lockdown to increase the no CBM limit for contactless payment to 2,500 rupees, so it used to be 500 and we've multiplied it by 5. It's a bold move and it will help into scaling contactless payments. So this is, so I appeal to the other banks in the room to promote and to educate whether to merchant or customers about this type of payment.
Thanks everyone. Coming to the point of Stefan and rejoining Stephanie on the same. Kevin from Bank One. We have at Bank One a variety of card flavors in credit card available in contactless. And pretty much coming to what Stephanie is saying, I think we need a bit more support from the acquiring side. In terms of earlier on, we already have an issuance of contactless card with a higher limit of 500 earlier to the market, and even as of today, the 2,500 is still lower than what we've already set on our card. And even to promote that initiative of contactless, Bank One during COVID time was doing a contribution for each contactless transaction to the Solidarity Fund. But the issue which we wanted to address, I wanted to raise on this forum is anytime, I'll pick on you, Stefania, no just because you have more, you got 60% of the market, so mostly when I do any configuration of my contactless card, I go to your POS for the testing and to make sure. But any changes that MCB does and their POS or an upgrade or software or something which is not informed to us, we get informed when our client tells us their transaction has been rejected. So maybe a synergy there where if any change or anything is happening to consider other bank and let them know there is a change on our POS or what needs to be changed on our side or setting of our card to come forward to get the transaction through. That's A. And B, myself being a user of contactless card, many times I've seen many POS, many places, contactless enabled, but when you ask you want to pay contactless, the cashier doesn't know how to do it. Now they tell you, oh no, we don't offer it, but I would not argue, but I could say last day, on yesterday, your friend did accept that payment there. So it's maybe education and acquiring side, like even I would pick on Stefan, when we have like the limit is 2,500, most would say we want volume in terms of number of transactions, and we want also volume in terms of issuing volume. So if you ask me to go put for fuel and 2,500 is not enough to fill up my tank. So I would really like to push it a little bit more, that acceptance of limit to be a bit higher, so that at least when you're in the petrol station you can just tap your card and go.
No, I totally agree. It is an ecosystem problematic. But I just want to share with you how we came about the 2,500, because it's an interesting story, and Fabrice knows the in and outs of it. So we were in total lockdown, right? So when I look at how the population, I mean, for me, when we were in lockdown, my utmost priority, it was a Thursday, right? It was on a Wednesday, we had the first case. On Thursday, the Prime Minister announced we were total lockdown. Friday, people were staying at home. So I went to work on Friday. My first priority is how do I get my people to work safely from home, right? That's my number one priority, and how I get my fraud team also to work safely from home, because we know that this is when hackers would be the most active. My second priority was how do we enable safe and seamless payments, right? So we are in total lockdown, right? And you know, e-commerce or spreading online, we need to, and we've worked together with Sebastian to enable that. So we need to take a decision, right? So what do we do? As you know, even if, as you rightly say, so MCB like has a big share of the market. This is a national contract. So we had to work with Fabrice from Visa, from MasterCard, etc. The 2,500 was decided based on, you know, the packs that the supermarkets were doing. So because if it were up to me, I would multiply by 5. It's a huge number, going from 500 to 2,500, because the role of contactless isn't to displace all types of card transaction. It's really the low ticket value. And if I look at my normal curve, 2,500, I'm hitting the 85% mark. So it's a lot of transactions. But we decided to pitch it because of that, of what was happening in the country. Now, for sure, if we were not in lockdown, the communication among all stakeholders would have been better. But speaking of Bank One, I actually had several phone calls with Cheryl, right? And there was actually maybe a misunderstanding. As I told him, the contactless limit on our POS is unlimited. A contactless payment, that is, you don't insert the pin, you just tap it. The no CVM limit has been set at 2,500. This is when you do a tap with no pin, right? So maybe you can argue that when you go filling station, it's too low. But bear in mind that the population is not yet fully full-fledged for contactless payments. Some people are still scared about contactless payments, you see. So I think 2,500 for a contract, I mean, 2,500 in dollar terms is upwards, I don't know, Fabrice, I think we're close to euro.
I think it's 60 US dollars.
60 US dollars, so we're close to euros. Europe is 50 euros, right? So we're close to euros, to Europe's no CVM limit, and I think for Mauritius, I personally find it a good pitch. But then still, yes, some issues, maybe depending on your customer segmentation, you may find it low. But
Exactly.
when I look at it from a macro perspective, 2,500, I mean, most of consumer payments transaction would go through. But you can still do a contactless transaction above 2,500. It's just that you will be prompted to pay.
Yeah, definitely. I do agree. I was aware in that conversation of Sharia and your service because earlier, even when it was at 500, we already set ours at 1,000. It was given into consideration client that's traveling abroad who been used to that culture, and if they can use it abroad with a higher limit, and when they come to Mauritius, it's sort of in a perspective to manage complaint. That's why we've always been going a bit for higher, and as well for the prices during COVID. I think we were among the one proactive as well. While you are looking at your fraud side, we also did increase our limit and was looping Fabrice in those communication in there. So because we know at 500 during COVID time, if you go to a supermarket, that means nothing. Even the 2,500 also was pretty much really, when we look at card transaction and average spend or even casual card, we knew what was the average during confinement time. Thank you, everyone.
Allow me, give me just 1 second. It's a very interesting discussion. Yes, the COVID has a particular context where we decide to look into the possibility to increase the velocity of the cards in terms of value of the transaction. But again, this is a market decision. I think if you say, we all agree that 2,500 is too high for Mauritius, I think you know the market better than us. You know, those feedback has to come back to Visa, and we will say, okay, yes, probably we need to also modify those limits. But again,
it's too low.
Transactions are mainly for everyday spend, and not for people who are going to buy a jewelry for their wife. They are not for people who are to buy a rare ticket. They are for people who are buying a steak, a coffee, a sandwich, the metro ticket, up a little bit and fuel the car of the car. So specific use cases where people need they need big. So if we now we can assess if the speed is not or not. Again, where the effort should be objective is to test the use case which is the spot. That's what Mauritius has got the markets.
I was just going to add one thing. I was thinking this is quite funny. I was about 18 months ago, I was sitting in a Bank of England meeting with a number of central banks, and Jamie Dimon sat opposite me. And I've had many experiences with Jamie Dimon. He's not a large fan of cryptocurrencies. And he looked at me and said, Loretta, I'm not a bank anymore, I'm a technology company. So I think this is a really interesting move that banks, all of us have to do technology. We can't shy away from it, and I think, gone are the days we could keep talking about collaboration and competition and not exponential. They meet. So you can be collaborators and competitors, but you all have to work in this technology environment because it just doesn't work. And education is the key. That's the biggest problem we have because we work in silos. The regulators, the banks, the payment platform, we all up until date worked in silos because we don't trust each other. Now we need to come together with technology to start trusting each other and trusting that 1 + 1 = 2. Not that I trust you as rival banks. It's how do we work all this together? Because I think as we're moving down payments, and I think it's going from contactless into things like digital currencies, like central bank issued currencies, that's going to come into networks of everybody. It's not just the payment providers or the banks or the regulators and the consumers, it's everybody in these networks. And cyber security, I think that's the biggest scare for most old people because they can see their money. But cyber security, we understand encryption, things, but most people don't. This is still science fiction. But having said that, how many of us used a contactless payment 4 years ago? How many people in the world use it now? Adoption is incredibly quick with this thing, and we're all struggling to keep up. You talk about your child. I go and ask my 16-year-old now. She's got something to tell me about technology. I ask her for recommendations, which I tell policy writers, because she knows more at 16 than I did at 35. This is the scary thing. So we're not talking about the world we live in. We're talking about the world of our children.
Thank you, Loretta. I think we'll wrap up here. Media, have any questions?
Yes, juste une remarque pour compléter le petit débat qui vient d'avoir lieu sur la fameuse limite. Une petite remarque sur le débat qui vient d'avoir lieu sur la fameuse limite bref, admettons que ce soit 2500 roupies actuellement. C'est juste qu'on est en train de parler de Contactless Payments. J'aimerais juste apporter une petite nuance à ça. On est en train en fait de parler de Contactless Identification. Et je pense que le paiement, I think I can continue in English if you want, but don't laugh, promise. Okay, acceptance of a population is a key factor. They will accept when they will stop thinking, oh, what if I lose my debit card and there is 50,000 limit on it, and I go and buy a moto at Jigalachang, I don't know. This is the problem of authentication. So we have identification with contactless, and as soon as we have contactless authentication, I think the problem will be solved by itself, because what are people scared of? Of losing their, I think, elder people, their debit cards, and if there's no limits on their debit card, well, anybody can take my money. But contactless, in fact, I think after 2,500 we ask for the PIN, so therefore it's no more contactless. It is a contactless identification, but a contact authentication. If we technologically challenge, si on arrive à avoir le achievement de ce challenge d'avoir le identification contactless and authentication contactless, authentication is just putting the PIN. Therefore, the limit is bon, là, on va parler de biométrie, tout ça, on va peut-être pas aller dans ce débat-là, mais à partir de... voilà.
Thank you. So, I think we will wrap up here. Le mot de la fin, je passerai donc la parole à nos 3 panélistes. Fabrice, je commence par toi. Le mot de la fin?
Yeah, merci Amaj. Thank you everyone. It was a great discussion. I like it. Really looking forward to come back to Mauritius and have a discussion with you. If I have to put it very simple, of course, Visa is not a philanthropic company. We want to make money, but we want to make money by achieving our vision, which is the best way to be paid, and bringing people into the financial, the formal economy, But on that one, we are not competing with UPI. We are not competing with MasterCard, which is a competitor, of course. We think that there is enough space for everyone to roll up our sleeves and to displace cash. You know the cost of operation of an ATM, Stephanie. You know, you will never be profitable on an ATM. But if you push people and refrain them to withdraw the ATM and push them to pay at the market, which are equipped, then it's a different game. So you see where we need to invest. We need to invest in the technology to the merchants. We need to train the market on how to use that technology. We need to train the consumer. We need to educate the consumer. And we need to displace cash. Easier said than done, but we have no choice. That's where we are heading to. And thanks for the effort of everyone. The battle continues.
Merci Fabrice. Stéphanie?
I think Fabrice did a good summary, as I said. I think we're heading in the right direction. And to be cash light, we really need to get acceptance. This is, for me, a prerequisite if we want to go cash light. And also, it's all about also collaboration, cooperation, and education, whether it is customer education, merchant education. So as you rightly said, so the fight is against cash, not against each other in this way.
Merci Stéphanie.
But my last thing is that please don't take cash out of systems, because I build these systems and these electronic encryption systems, I tell you now. If we build systems that we can't undo in 15, 20 years, that totally give the state control over our children, that's not good. We need cash. It's a segment, yeah, it's small, but give people the options to do how they want to use their money. It doesn't have to necessarily be electronic. If it's cash, it's cash. But you have to cater for all those things. And I'm really worried about China, because they're building their central bank digital currency that is going to totally control, with AI, everything that their people do. They won't be control of their money. If you don't control your money or your asset, you don't control your life.
Thank you, Loretta. Thank you, everyone, for this conclusion. I think we'd like to wrap up here. I would like to, on behalf of our client Visa, thank you all for taking time out to attend this forum, which I hope you have found interesting. I'm sure Fabrice will want to do, this is going to be the first of many more to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we will be in touch. I would like to therefore thank you for attending today. I would like to sincerely thank our panelists on my right, Loretta, for accepting our invitation. Stéphanie, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for accepting. It was indeed great to have you next to me here and address the audience. And Fabrice, also thank you very much for joining us live and taking time to sort of address us and share your thoughts and experience based on what Visa is doing globally and in the region. I'd also like to thank the media for being present here in large numbers. Iman, we would like to show Fabrice with the audience. I would like to also invite you all to stay back for some more tea and snacks just after that. A special thank you for my team who've been here with me organizing this event. Iman. Thank you. Thank you, Sandrine, Sach, and Marie-Noël, our PR specialist, who's also present. So, Fabrice, we're trying to show you some of the faces so you can blacklist those.